Hey, good morning. Mindy and Mushka had a baby girl, their first. And, you know, we don't take these things ever for granted. A healthy baby is bigger than a lottery. And you know how people scream when they win a lottery. So thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for all your kindness, all your good, all your revealed miracles. And on that note, I'm also going to say how I just had a magnificent Shabbat with a group of special needs moms in Connecticut. And it was such a high for me. Like I feel like I went from the high of the Shabbaton with special needs moms to a high with these this Mazel Tov. So it's just so much to be grateful for. And that all leads, of course, into how we have to thank Hashem for everything. And when we have continued trust with Hashem, He just showers down kamayim upon him. And I think that that's something that is very, something's weird over here. Yeah. So, yes, thank you. Good morning, Corinne. Good morning, Elaine. Good morning, Evelyn. Good morning, Helga. We're super excited. We're going to start off with, of course, thanking Hashem with a chapter of Tehillim. And everyone here who has anything to be grateful for, anything to be grateful for, you say Tehillim every single day. It's just like you brush your teeth, you have to wash negavas or semo the ani and say Tehillim. Like that's just our way of being a mensch. We talk about, it's important for us to be mensch. Being a mensch means saying thank you to Hashem every single day. There's no other way. Okay, here we go. Chapter Chaf. We have Yehud Yaakov Moshe Ben Necha. Please put down if you need anybody to say Mazel Tov for, or anyone you need to say Tehillim for. Yehudis bas Sarah, Tzipora Hinda bas Rachel Miriam, Sarah bas Chana, Menucha bas Emmanuel, Yisrael ben Sarah Mindel, Nechamadina bas Esther Dacia, Tuvi Moshe ben Peril, Iram Brocha bas Sarah Shira Leah, Hindel Tova bas Tamabasia, Moshe ben Miriam, Leah bas Etel, Nomi Sarah ben Tzipora, Sarah bas Penina, Yitzchak Mendel ben Bracha, Amalka bas Rachel Reza, Yeshua ben Leah. And anyone else that we have to say Tehillim for? I see Shoshana bas Sarah. Okay. Anyone else? All right. So now just starting off with a question for all of you. How's your week going so far? How's your week? Is it a week of joy, gratitude, elation, worry, anxiety, gratefulness, depression, thankfulness? What's going on in your heart right now? Good morning, Arlene, so that we know what kind of audience we have today and who's joining our class. We're going to say chapter Chaf, and here we go. Lamratseach Mizmar LeDavid Yancha Dinar B'Yom Tzara Yisagef Hashem Elohei Yaakov Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh U'Mitzion Yisadeka Yiskar Kol Mechasecha V'Lascha Yidash Nesela Yiten Lecha Chalavecha V'Chol Atzascha Yimale Yirane B'Shuasecha U'V'Shem Eloheinu Nidgol Yimalei Adonai Kol Mashalasecha Ata Yidati Ki Yoshi Adonai Mishicho Yaneu Mishmei Kocho B'Gvurus Yesha Yimino Ela Varecha Ve'ela Basusim V'Nachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir Hema Karu V'Nafalu V'Nachnu Kamnu V'Nisodad Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yanenu V'Yom Karenu. I see, Becky, it says stressful but grateful. Life will also always have, listen, we're in Gullus, we're going to have a level of stressfulness. And I see Corinne is going tomorrow to Israel with your grandson. That's incredible, Corinne. I know Sharon told me you're going to spend a week with your grandson who's having a bar mitzvah. That is such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gesture. And you're going to have an amazing week. So hatzlacha on your trip and only simchas. Okay, we'll put away the Tehillim here. Now, I just came back from an amazing Shabbaton. These women are part of what's called a friendship circle. in Connecticut. It's run by Malia Shmutkin and Chani Kamen. And these two women run not only a friendship circle for all the children, but they run a Shabbaton once a year for the moms. A weekend of respite, sharing, learning, pampering. I mean, they started off on the Sunday at an oasis full of massages and facials. And then they treat the mother to this beautiful lunch on a terrace where they heard from a Rebbitzin on how to connect your physical reality to your spiritual reality, because we had just come back from massages. And so it was all about, is life all about massages? Is that what life is all about? So she spoke about the soul and what it needs, and how does the soul replenish, and how does the soul connect. And then we had a Shabbat at this place called Terrytown Estates. That was magnificent. And we had a Friday night dinner and a Shabbos lunches and speakers. And the women shared their gratitude, and they shared so much. And they asked me to give a lecture on how to turn darkness into light. So because I learned so much of this Habitachon, a lot of what I spoke about was based on this book. I want to show you something also adorable that we made. And it's like a bulletin board, a little bulletin board that you can change your motto every day or every week. And each one of us had to take a sort of a motto or a message or a life goal that we feel really fits with us. And I wrote, this too is for the good. And in Yiddish, it's Gam Zulatova, right? And so that was my thought that day. And all the women wrote different things. Like one woman wrote, let God, and let go, let God. Someone wrote, think good, it will be good, right? Trach good, fit sein good. They all wrote different slogans that really reflect where they are. Francis, am I still frozen? Because it's really gorgeous weather outside. I should not be frozen. Okay, I hope I'm not frozen. Yikes. Anybody can tell me if you can hear me? Anyone? Oh my gosh. Oh, you can hear me? Okay, good. Okay, Francis says she couldn't hear me. You could all hear me? Fine. Okay, good. So last week, a very dear friend of ours, Ian Abramowitz, and we had said Tehillim for him for many, many, Yitzchak Moshe and Rachel Reza. We said Tehillim for Ian Abramowitz, and last week he passed away. His soul returned to his maker. And it's a big tragedy for the family, for the whole community. He touched thousands of people with his positivity. He had a positive blog. He started putting on tefillin with a big tefillin blog, tefillin for Ian. He really connected with his neshama and shared that with others. But something very interesting happened. He had bought my husband's book, 7 Conversations with Jerry, a couple of months ago. And he bought a copy for each one of his children. But he didn't want to give it to his kids because, he didn't think he wanted to speak about death to his children. Here he was focusing on getting better, and he did not really want to share that. But he left the books in his drawer. When he passed away, his children found this book. And one of his daughters has not put the book down. She reads it, she highlights it, and she addressed the Shiva crowd every night with a thought from this book, 7 Conversations with Jerry. Something about the neshama, something about the journey of the neshama, what we can do for the soul. How does the Jew mourn? Why do we mourn? Will we see our loved ones again? And she said that this book has given her a life that nothing in the world can have done. Because that's what Torah does, right? Torah gives us life. Eitz Chayim Hi. L'machazikim bo. For those of us who hold on to the Torah, it gives us life. For those of us who try to get on with life without the assistance of a Torah, they're just pushing one foot ahead of the other. But the joy of life, you can only get when you have a Torah perspective. And this daughter, who tells us she's not religious, but this book has opened a brand new opening, a brand new door for wisdom of the Torah that she never knew existed. And why am I speaking about this right now for Ian Abramowitz and his family is because Yisron ha'or mitoch ha'choshech. If you know what that means, please give me an emoji. Yisron ha'or mitoch ha'choshech. Sometimes through the dark, we get to see enormous light. We don't always see the magnificence of the sun unless it comes after a darkness. You know, my friends, in Judaism, we believe that the day begins the night before, right? So when does Shabbat start? Okay, you tell me, when does Shabbat start? It starts the night before. Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Boker, Yom Echad. That's why Shabbat always starts Friday night. That's why Yom Kippur starts Friday night. All our holidays start the night before. In fact, my Mendy and Mushka had the baby last night, but it's today's date, right? Because last night is already considered today. So the darkness is always right before the light. We see that now also with Galut, with exile. The world is very dark, but we know that the darkness is that anticipation for the light that will come, and Mashiach will come soon. So I wanted to share a story about a young woman. Hi, good morning, Yomi. Good morning, Barb. About a young woman who was actually, well, let's start from the beginning. There was a train with a large transport of Jewish prisoners, and they arrived in the Nazi killing centers in Poland. All the Polish Gentiles came running out to watch as the Jews were being shipped away. They were horrible people. Horrible people. The Polish Gentiles were horrible people in the 1940s. There were a few, and let's be very clear, there were a few that were righteous Gentiles, but the majority were not. And they would come out and grab all the fortune that the villagers had left behind. They would rummage through and take the gold and the silver and diamonds and heirlooms. And the Nazis said, take whatever you want because they're not coming back. And they gleefully took the treasures. At one point, there was a young woman who was walking by with a beautiful, beautiful coat, a fur coat, a mink. And two Polish women said, let's grab it. So they ripped off that mink from this young woman. As the young woman walked off to get onto the cattle cars. And they went to the side and rummaged through to find the gold. They started to grab and grab and grab and grab. These lowlifes grabbed and grabbed. And then one woman said, I'll take the coat. And when she lifted the coat, she said, that's weird. This coat is very heavy. And when they looked inside the lining of the coat, they found a baby. One of the women said, you know what? I never had a child of my own. If it's okay with you, I'll take the baby. You take everything else. And she ran off and showed her husband that this was her baby and that they were going to raise this child. And they did. They raised her beautifully and never told her she was a Jew. Finally, life goes on. The old woman, who was the mom, died. And as this young woman, whose name was Lila, as this young woman started preparing for packing up her mother's home, packing up all the, memories, a knock on the door. And a lady says, you should know you are not a Catholic. You are a Jew, and I was there when your mother took you. And she told her the whole history. And the woman said, Lila goes, that's ridiculous. Like, how do I know you're not making up a story? She goes, well, when you were born, there was a locket around your neck. And we both looked at it and we saw it was a half a gold locket, a half a heart, and it had Hebrew inscriptions. You know, take it or leave it, but if you go through your mother's stuff, you will find this locket. And this woman, sure enough, as she was cleaning up, she saw a treasure box that had a lock. When she opened it up, there was the locket. She did not know Hebrew. She saw it was a language that was foreign to her. She held this little necklace in her hand, totally shaken up, lost. I thought I was a Catholic, and now I'm a Jew. What does that mean to me? So she took this locket to a jeweler and had it enlarged and wore it around her neck, tucked in. She didn't know what to make of it until one day she was in Europe on a trip, and she noticed two young rabbis. Again, she had no idea who they were, but she was able to recognize a Jew. She went over to them. She showed them the locket. She goes, what is this? And they said, well, this is Jewish. This is Hebrew letters. She told them the story, and she goes, I think I'm Jewish, but how do I know for sure? So they said to her, there's a Rebbe in New York who is brilliant and wise and holy. Pay him a visit and ask his opinion. And she did. This woman comes to the Rebbe. She says to the Rebbe, I am a Catholic woman. I raised by Catholic parents in Poland. My mother died recently, and I find out I'm a Jew. What do I do? And the Rebbe said to her, what do you do for a living? And she goes, I'm a doctor. The Rebbe says, you can help the Jewish nation now in Israel. Go to Israel, go visit a Beth Din, discover and confirm your Jewish identity, and start a Jewish family in Israel. They need you, you need them. For this woman, it was such a shakeup of her reality, but she listened to the Rebbe and she made Aliyah. After confirming that indeed she was Jewish, and she might have gone through some kind of conversion just to confirm it all, she eventually got a job at the Hadassah hospital. She was there in 2001 when the Sbarro pizza shop was blown up by a terrorist. And the frantic reality of what was going on. Jews were flying into the hospital. The ambulance, Magen Adam, was running into the hospital, bringing in people that were injured, that were hurt, people that they weren't sure if they were dead. It was horrible. But what caught her eye was something incredible. There was an elderly Jew that was frantic. He was running around screaming for his granddaughter. And she found it very unusual that there was this hysteria associated, but like a very high alert hysteria. And something drew her to this elderly man. And she said to him, I will help you find your grandchild. Give me a description. And he described the little girl. And then he said, she's wearing a locket, a gold locket with half a heart. But Lila was so caught up with the emergency, she didn't actually register what the old man said. And she ran from room to room. Because she's a doctor, she had access to all the rooms. She ran in and out, in and out, in and out, looking. This was a man, this was a teenager, this was an older woman, till she found the little girl who was alive. And she went in and she quickly ran into the hallway to call the grandfather. I found the little girl, come on in. This little girl suits the description. The grandfather comes in, and sure enough, it's his grandchild. He wraps himself around the little girl and starts to cry. And he thanks Lila, the doctor. And then Lila remembered what the man said, that this little girl had a locket. So she turned the locket out of what, so that she could see, and it was visible. And she is stunned, because that locket is exactly the replica of the locket that she is wearing. She pulls out her locket and she says to the elderly man, "Where did you make that locket? I have the same one." And the elderly Jew said to her, "This locket I made for my two daughters in the 1940s. This little girl is a grandchild of what is my grandchild, the daughter of this wife, and was probably a granddaughter of this daughter. So granddaughter of my daughter. But my other daughter was murdered in Auschwitz. And I don't have anyone left from that side of the family." And now it was Lila's turn to scream and cry and shout. And she grabbed the old man and says, "Abba, I am your granddaughter. I am the granddaughter. Here's the locket." From darkness comes light. This is such an emotional story, but my friends, this is reality. If we can look at the world through the eyes of a Jew, and when Hashem tells us, Yisran ha'or mitoch ha'choshech, that through darkness you will see light. So many of us get so stuck in the darkness. We get so stuck in the sadness, in the tragedy, in the desperation, in the despair. We forget that there's a God that's running the world, that's allowing us to come and wait a few more moments, and you will see the light. Think about it. How many incredible institutions, organizations, charitable monuments have been created after darkness? Think about the Amber Alert. How many of you know what the Amber Alert is? I want to see everyone who's watching tell me with a thumbs up if you know what the Amber Alert is. I'll give it a few seconds. Okay. All of you have heard of Amber Alerts. Do you know how the Amber Alert came to be? The Amber Alert came because a little girl by the name of Amber was kidnapped and abducted and then murdered. Her parents were in such darkness, they couldn't handle the pain. And they decided to do something light, something positive out of the darkness of their tragedy. And they created something called the Amber Alert. That anytime a little girl or a child is abducted, there's quickly an alert that goes out. And this alert allows the greater audience to be aware that there's a child that's missing. This is what she looks like. This is what he looks like. Please go outside, look, be aware. If you see something, say something, right? So many lives are being saved because of little Amber. From the darkness comes light. How many of you have heard of an incredible woman by the name of Sherry Mendel? An amazing American woman that made Aliyah to Israel. She wrote a book called The Blessing of a Broken Heart. She actually came here to Shul to speak to our community. I went to meet her in Israel. She started an organization called the Kobe Foundation. What is this? Let me tell you what this is. Sherry Mendel, living in Israel, had a wonderful little boy. His name was Kobe. One day, Kobe skipped school, and with his friend, they went walking and camping in the Wadi. They were murdered by Palestinians, Yimach Shemam, by those despicable Palestinian terrorists. She was in such pain, she couldn't breathe. She couldn't see how she would put one foot in front of the other ever again. And there's something magical in Israel that I want to share with you. They have a minhag, a custom in Israel, that if somebody is affected by terrorism in Israel, during Shiva, those families will come and pay respects to the family who's sitting Shiva. Only close relatives and only survivors of this terrorist attacks are allowed to come. Why? Because the person who's sitting Shiva needs to see that those family and friends, those friends who went through this darkness, they'll be able to pull them out of the darkness and show them that, yes, there will be light again in your life. Because otherwise, the tragedy is so intense, you don't think you'll ever be able to get out. You don't think you'll ever be able to smile again. So Sherry Mandel is sitting Shiva, and a very attractive young woman walks in. Oh, her hair is done, her nails are done, she's looking good. And Sherry's thinking, who gives you the nerve to come to my Shiva house? I don't need to see gorgeous, happy people right now. I only need to see people that are like me. And suddenly that lady, that visitor, started to talk. She said, Sherry, I came to be Menachem Avel because I too lost a child to terrorism. And Sherry looked up and she said, there is light after darkness. There is light after darkness. And that's when she wrote the book, A Blessing of a Broken Heart. And more than that, she created a foundation called the Kobe Foundation in memory of her son, Kobe, which allows for respite for moms, dads, and siblings who have experienced terrorism in their life. They come for 10 days or a week to just enjoy life with like-minded people. She created a foundation of light after darkness. That is what Jews do. We have so much trust in Hashem, and we know that from every bad, there is good. I think of people like Amber's family. I think of people like Sherry. I think of people like Danielle Abramowitz, who are taking such a dark space and sharing light. Incredible people we come from. Incredible nation of Israel we come from. We know that there will be joy and light and love again in our lives. So one of the speakers at the Habitachon this past weekend that I went to for the mothers of special needs children was a woman by the name of Vivi Darren. Vivi Darren is one of my mentors. She's one of the women in the world that I look up to. And I want to share with you something that the Rebbe told her and her husband when they were engaged. The Rebbe said something in Yiddish. Ob wird machen lichtig und warm bei anderen, wird sein lichtig und warm bei euch. Anybody know what that is? I'll say it again in Yiddish. It's beautiful. And I'll translate it. Ob wird machen lichtig und warm bei anderen, wird sein lichtig und warm bei euch. In English, it means the Rebbe was telling Vivi and her husband, Rabbi Darren, if you set up your home, if you set up your life with that one goal to make light and warmth for others, you will have light and warmth in your family. All of you, my friends, Pablo, Arlene, Ava, Corrine, Sharon, all of you, I'm not going to say all your names, but if we set up our lives with one trajectory, and that is, I will bring light and love and warmth to others, then, and the focus is not you, the focus is others, then Hashem responds by giving you light and warmth for your family. That's the way our lives work. Selflessness, worrying about others, worrying about your children, worrying about your children's children, your children's neighbors, your children's friends, your neighbors, elderly that you know, families with disabilities that you know. Giving ourselves to others in guarantees that our life will have lichtig und warm. You know, I have a friend that is an urban designer. He sort of sets out when a new community is being built, he sets out the whole traffic, outline, where do the roads go? Where do they meet? Where do they diverge? Where is there a yield? Where is there a stop sign? Where is there a traffic light? Where are the bridges come in? How do the bridges flow from each other? Where are you allowed U-turns? Where are you not allowed U-turns? Sometimes in life, I'm sitting on a road, I'm like, who thought about this ridiculous design? It is ridiculous. But then, you sometimes get out to be on the airplane, which I was just on yesterday. And as I have the bird's eye view, I look down and I see how the beauty and the brilliance of the design. Wow, that's why this goes in through here, this goes here, and how the bridges meet and how they go one into each other and how the traffic flows. And you see where there's land and where there's water and where there's roads and and I was like, wow, this urban designer was brilliant, right? Think about the God who created the design. There's a lot of darkness, but there's so much light. There's so much light. We are not always privy to the light, but we have to know. Vayihi v'erev, vayihi boker, yom echad. There will always be boker after erev. I'm going to share a final story before I say goodbye for today. There was a young man from Israel. He was in his mid-20s, and he was dating and dating and dating. He wanted to get married, but every beautiful, smart girl that he went to date, after the first date, they would sort of end the date. There was no second date. And the man knew what the problem was. He had a terrible, terrible gash on his face. And no matter how many surgeries and plastic surgeons he had seen or done, they could not fix this gash. It was forever going to be obvious and ugly, to put it frankly. At some point, he was so devastated by this look, he went to see his rabbi. I said, what do I do? I'm wasting my time dating because every girl says no to me. On paper, I have all the great qualifications. My resume is brilliant. I'm a great achiever. I'm handsome. I'm smart. I am, kind. I'm funny. I am everything a girl would want. But when they look at my face, they can't live with that look. So the rabbi said to him, why don't you just get the elephant out of the room? Just be open about it. Just bring it out to the obvious. You go out, welcome the girl, buy her a drink and say to her, listen, just want to make it very, very clear. This is the problem with my face. I'm going to tell you how it happened, and then let's continue the date. I don't waste your breath anymore. So the next few days, he gets a phone call from a marriage maker who has a beautiful, kind, talented, fantastic girl who wants to date him. And the boy goes, great. So what? So she'll drop me after the first date? Duh. If she's so beautiful and smart and adorable and brilliant and charismatic and kind, why should she settle with an ugly guy like me with a gash on his face? The marriage man goes, just try one more time. So he goes out and he meets this girl and he's smitten immediately. But at the same time, his heart is broken because he knows she's going to drop him. But he listens to his rabbi. And after they just exchange some niceties and pleasantries, he says, you see the gash on my face? Let me just tell you what happened, and then we can get on with the date. So she says, sure. He says, about 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I was walking home from yeshiva one night in Jerusalem. It was dark. And I hear a piercing scream, like a young girl's voice, but it sounds like she was just either fell or was attacked, and I knew I had to go help. So I ran to where the screaming was coming, and I saw a dark fellow attacking this young woman. I ripped him off. I kicked him. I fought him. This young girl was able to get up and run for her life. But alas, this measly, bratty, miserable perpetrator had a knife. And he slashed my face and left me for dead while he ran off. I saved the girl, I know, but I didn't think I would survive. Eventually, I was found, taken to the hospital, and they tried to save my life and repair this very obvious gash. This is the best that was able to be done after all my surgeries, and I have to live with it. But now that I told you the story, let's get on with the date. By this time, the young woman was crying her eyes out. And the young man felt so bad. I mean, it's a sad story, but he didn't want to really shake up the date. And this young woman was shaking. And she said to him, for 8 years, I have been searching for the man, the person that saved my life that night from being raped or being murdered. I had no idea I would ever find him again. But you are the man that took the gashing for me. You saved my life. Can we get married? And the two of them got married. Out of the darkness comes light. Sometimes the darkness is so bad. Sometimes the darkness is so black. Sometimes it's so dark. But we have to remember the promise Hashem gave us. Yisro na'or mitoch hachoshech. After the darkness comes light. We know this in our lives. We know this in our day-to-day experience. And we know this as a nation. We know this as a nation. We are in a very dark place. Mashiach is going to come. Have a great week.